Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at what people operations teams are actually doing versus, what they say they're valuing.
Right.
And we're getting all of this from the new 2026 State of People Strategy Report.
An absolutely massive data set.
It is. And if you're in the people profession, this is one you really have to pay attention to. It just lays bare these really painful contradictions facing the whole field right now.
It really does. It sets a very tumultuous stage for 2026. I mean, HR teams are being told to do completely opposite things at the same time.
Like what?
Well, they have to innovate, consolidate, learn, and then unlearn all at once.
Okay.
And on top of that, you've got this insane pressure to prove the ROI on every little program while also managing, an increasingly polarized workplace. The whole mission here is to find what the report calls the sticky middle.
That sounds precarious.
Extremely. It's that point where efficiency and humanity are supposed to meet.
And hey, before we really get into the weeds of this data, if you appreciate hearing these kinds of contrarian takes on people's strategy, and you'd rather have the nuance than just sound bites.
Which we definitely try to do.
We do. We'd encourage you to follow the Contrarian HR podcast on Spotify, Substack, and YouTube. You can read hundreds of detailed articles about HR there.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is to go way beyond the headlines. We're going to dig into the key findings. Everything from performance and AI to polarization and, of course, pay.
And really highlight these internal conflicts that are creating what the report calls an identity crisis for HR people all over the world.
It's the perfect term for it.
So let's start with maybe the most confusing finding of all. It's this clash between job stability for HR professionals and the emotional drain of the job itself.
Yeah, on paper, everything looks great.
Right. The profession looks incredibly stable. Globally, 79% of HR pros feel their job is secure. That's good news.
It is.
And almost everyone, 93%, expects their team's headcount to stay the same or even go up. 90% say the same for budgets. It looks like a picture of total confidence.
It does, but that's where we get to the giant but.
A contradiction.
Exactly. Because that job security, it turns out, is no cure for what feels like a fundamental shift in purpose.
Okay.
Despite all that stability, a massive 41% of HR professionals have thought about leaving the field completely in just the last 12 months.
Wow. 41%. That's almost half the people whose job is to retain other people.
It suggests the model is fundamentally broken.
So if the job's secure, the budget's there.
Yeah.
Why? What's causing that drain?
Well, I think a lot of people got into HR for a reason, They wanted to help people grow, build a great culture.
The human side of it.
The human side.
Yeah.
But the reality of the business today has just worn them down. They feel like they've become the sort of reluctant cops of the organization.
And the report says they feel unheard, undervalued, and underwater.
That's the quote. And there's another great one from Rana Robillard at Techion. She says something like, HR teams carry the emotional and operational weight of the business, yet too often receive little recognition or support.
That makes so much sense. You're the one managing layoffs, then you have to turn around and run a culture program.
Exactly. And the data even backs this up geographically.
How so?
European HR pros feel way more energized, 85% of them, compared to just 72% in the U.S.
Okay, and why the big difference?
The analysis points to better work-life balance, sure, but also crucially, stronger employee-friendly legislation in Europe. When the law provides a safety net, HR spends less time playing referee in power struggles.
And more time on actual strategy, which is more fulfilling.
Precisely.
And there's another split too, right? Based on the type of work.
A fascinating one. If you support white-collar corporate offices, dealing with the politics, the RTO mandates, only 56% are likely to recommend HR as a field.
Only 56.
But if you support blue-collar workers, that number jumps to 77%.
So it's something about the white-collar office environment itself that's burning out the HR teams who have to manage it.
That internal dissatisfaction is the perfect lead-in to what might be the most controversial finding in this whole report.
The great priority pivot.
Towards efficiency and, away from culture.
Yeah, this is a huge one. For the first time in the 6 years they've done this report, performance management has officially overtaken employee engagement as HR's #1 priority.
The numbers are so close, too. 40% for performance, 39% for engagement. It's a photo finish, but it signals a really sharp turn towards hard metrics.
And that turn has come at a cost. a measurable one.
A huge cost to programs that are, harder to put a number on. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, DEIB. It's now a priority for just 16% of teams.
16. I remember when that number was much higher.
It peaked at 30% in 2023. This isn't a dip. It's a strategic disinvestment.
Okay, but let me push back a little here. In a tight economy, where HR is fighting to prove its ROI, doesn't it make some tactical sense to cut something like DEIB if the business is just focused on surviving?
That's the short-term thinking, absolutely. And that's exactly why this creates what the report calls a cruel irony.
Okay, what's the irony?
Organizations are cutting DEIB to focus on performance, but the data explicitly shows that high-performing teams, the ones already exceeding their goals, are 5 times more likely to prioritize DEIB than low-performing teams.
Wait, say that again? The companies winning are the ones investing in inclusion,
That's the core contradiction.
while the ones who are struggling are cutting it, thinking that's the path to success.
Exactly. High performers get that DEIB isn't some soft, feel-good program. It's infrastructure.
It's foundational.
Yes. There's a quote from Natalie Brees that nails it. When teams feel seen, valued, and empowered to contribute authentically, performance follows. Low performers are mistakenly cutting the very fuel for innovation because they think it's expendable.
And the report shows what happens when you make that mistake. It's this low performer vicious cycle.
It is. 65% of them say they're constantly in crisis mode. That's compared to just 21% of top performers.
And when you're always fighting fires, there's no time for strategy.
None. And to make it worse, 61% of these same struggling companies are asking their employees to do more work for no more pay. It's a recipe for total burnout.
Which brings us to technology, where there's another one of these major conflicts brewing around, budgets and tools.
A huge one. 55% of HR teams are under pressure to consolidate their tech stack, cut costs, streamline.
Of course.
And yet, the data shows the complete opposite is true for the best teams. Successful, high-performing teams use more technology, not less.
How much more?
Almost half, 49% of high-performing teams use 6 or more HR tools. That's double the average.
So the pressure to consolidate isn't about having fewer tools. It's about having better, more integrated ones.
It's about building a smart ecosystem, not just a smaller one.
And speaking of smart tech, AI is a huge piece of this. It's moving from just hype to, hands-on application.
It's exploding, especially what they call agentic AI.
Right. Can you just quickly define that?
Sure. It's the type of AI that can plan and act on its own to hit a goal, not just, summarize data for you. And 42% of white-collar HR teams are already using it regularly.
Wow. And I'm guessing high performers are all over this.
Oh, they're leading the charge. 50% of high performers use agentic AI regularly. For low performers, it's only 6%.
That is a massive gap.
It is. But all this progress is happening alongside some very real ethical concerns. 61% of HR leaders said they have moderate or serious concerns about how fast AI is being adopted.
And you can really see those concerns and that polarization in general when you look at this through a generational lens, especially with tech and things like return to office.
The generational splits are a perfect map of the workplace divisions right now. You have boomers and Gen X who are more focused on strategy, but they're skeptical of new tech.
Right. Over half want proof it works before they'll commit.
And on RTO, 83% of boomers are fully on board with mandatory return to office. They value that traditional structure.
Then you have millennials, who are actually most of the survey respondents.
And they are the most likely to be using that agentic AI we were talking about at 38%. They're embracing it.
But the real voice of dissent here is clearly Gen Z.
Clearly. They are the most willing to try new tech, but they are also the most worried about the ethics. 70% of them voiced concerns over AI. That's more than any other group.
And on RTO, they're not having it. Only 44% agree with those policies.
So HR is stuck in the middle, basically mediating these ideological standoffs every single day.
Let's shift to another thing that fuels those standoffs. Money. This next finding is a really tough pill for HR to swallow.
It is.
It seems transparency isn't really paying off for employees, even though HR teams are feeling pretty good about it.
Right. 54% of HR teams globally rate their company's pay transparency as good or excellent. They think they've got it figured out.
They feel confident, but the employee pushback tells a totally different story.
A totally different story. There's this massive conflict brewing around something the report calls dry promotions.
We need to define that. What's a dry promotion?
It's when you're given a bunch of new responsibilities, maybe a new title, maybe you inherit the work of someone who was laid off, but you don't get a meaningful pay bump to go with it.
And this is actually happening.
Oh, yeah. 43% of HR pros confirmed it's happening at their company.
So you're asking people to absorb the pain of cuts without sharing any of the benefit.
And they are not taking it quietly. 48% of HR leaders say employees are actively pushing back on these dry promotions, and half are just asking for more pay in general.
It's a loud signal. Transparency without action is, well, it's worse than silence. It just confirms to the employee that they're being undervalued.
It absolutely does. And we see a bit of a difference here regionally. European teams are much more likely to increase bonuses, 41% of them, compared to only 20% of American teams.
So beyond just pay, the report talks about these broader cultural and political divides in the workplace.
Yes, almost a quarter, 23%, said that navigating this polarization is a huge part of their daily job.
And this is where it gets really interesting for HR leaders. There's this high-stakes decision they have to make.
The old advice was just stay quiet, right? Don't touch controversial topics.
Right, but the data says the opposite. Organizations that actually take an active stance on these issues report 80% employee engagement.
80%, compared to only 50% for the organizations that stay quiet.
A 30-point gap. That's astronomical. So silence is basically being read as complicity.
Or cowardice, yeah. But the solution isn't just to be loud. Regina Ross makes a great point in the report. She says it's about having clear guiding principles around when and how the organization takes a stance.
So it's the clarity that matters.
It's the clarity. Knowing the organization has a spine, a consistent framework, that's what builds trust, even if an employee doesn't agree with every single position.
So if we pull all of this together for the HR person listening right now, the message seems to be you're being pulled in a dozen different directions.
great.
You have to consolidate budgets, cut programs like DEIB, but also adopt AI. And you have to do all of that while trying to keep people engaged in a polarized world where they're pushing back on overwork and stagnant pay.
It is, as the report says, a full-blown identity crisis.
So what's the path out?
The report concludes it comes down to two things, really. First, you have to embed people programs into the business. Prove that measurable ROI.
Tie it to the business goals.
Yes. And second, embrace AI not to replace the human side, but to enhance it. Let it automate the analysis so HR can be more strategic, more empathetic. The winning teams are betting big on their people and then stacking the deck with AI.
They found that sticky middle.
The place where efficiency and humanity can actually coexist.
Which really brings us right back to where we started, to that core contradiction. If the best performing teams are 5 times more likely to prioritize DEIB, and performance is now HR's #1 goal.
Right.
What is the real long-term cost of betting on those short-term cuts instead of investing in the virtuous cycle that actually fuels high performance?